Social media influencer Kai Cenat is facing multiple charges. The popular Twitch streamer organized a giveaway in Union Square Park on Friday. Supposed to be PlayStation 5s that they were handing out. Instead, it turned into mayhem when some in the crowd of thousands of people, mostly young people, became violent toward police and people in the area. There were several injuries and some people even ended up in the hospital. Police arrested about 66 people, dozens of which are underage. Mayor Adams spoke about the chaos and the role parents play in the lives of their kids. Take a listen.
This is not a policing issue. This is a parenting issue. And we need to be clear on that. Police is the response after an incident happened, but there should be a proactive approach.
Well, Cenat was released from police custody over the weekend. He is facing charges of inciting a riot and promoting an unlawful gathering in New York City. But joining us now to explain those charges, Peter Frankel, former prosecuting defense attorney, who always has his finger on the pulse of what is happening here in New York City. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we talked about some of those charges. What is it? Maybe just explain first. Misdemeanor, felony, and most importantly, are these charges going to stick?
Right, so really important to understand. First of all, NYPD files the initial charges. So apparently they've charged riot, incite to riot, unlawful assembly. The district attorney's office is going to review those charges and they're going to decide what they think is appropriate here. So Mr. Cenat hasn't even seen a judge yet. He's probably going to go see a judge in the next month, and by that time the district attorney's office will have decided whether or not the charges that NYPD brought are actually the right ones.
Now, we talked to Chief Jeffrey Madry not too long ago, and we just asked about what does it cost from the NYPD having to bring in overtime, bring in so many people to try to control this, the destruction, the damages, all that stuff, and he said they don't even have a number for it yet. So once that comes out, is that more likely to influence the charges and if they stick or not?
You know, I think what's really important here to understand is with respect to these charges, every criminal charge has elements, and these elements have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And the common thread with these particular charges that he's charged with is that he had to have intended or just been so recklessly disregard that there would end up being what the statute refers to as tumultuous and violent conduct. And I just don't see it here. I don't see it here. This kid had, you know, a giveaway of PlayStation 5s. And let's not forget, he's not alone here. He's got a LA-based PR firm that orchestrated this whole thing, and they've done this before, and they didn't think it was a problem. In my view, you know, this is a management problem. His handlers did not make the right call here.
As we mentioned, we spoke to Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry a little earlier. He sort of described the melee. I think we have a piece of sound here that we wanted to play for you.
Lawrence was arrested, so of course he'll have to deal with the district attorney in the court system. But ultimately, there are a lot of people who had property damage. There were people who were hurt, and I'm sure they'll be looking for restitution in other ways.
And so he's sort of getting at some of the civil side of it here. Could Mr. Cenat be facing some kind of civil lawsuits from maybe people who were in the crowd who feel like they were duped and got sort of caught up in all this?
Could he? Yes, but let's remember, there are allegations that there were professional agitators here. You know, people have to be responsible for their own behavior at some point. So it's a bit of a tenuous connection to say that, you know, certainly this wasn't handled properly by Cenat, but to suggest that he's civilly responsible for people bringing M80s and smoke bombs and throwing bottles and damaging cars and things of that nature, you know, will there be lawsuits? Absolutely. Are they going to be successful? That's a completely different story.
You know, you were talking about this PR company that was sort of involved there. They did put out a statement. We have it here. It says, "We are deeply disheartened by the outbreak of disorderly conduct that affected innocent people and businesses and do not condone that behavior." That's from the PR company AMP. We apologize to all those impacted. We are fully cooperating with local authorities. That's what they're saying about this. We know that the NYPD is trained, obviously, to handle circumstances. They did catch some criticism, obviously, with the George Floyd protests, how that went down. They were supposed to do this intense training. Maybe this is one of the first high-profile incidents where you might see that training in action. And it appeared there was some restraint shown. What did you make of that part of it?
You know, I have to say, I think, you know, you got to give credit where credit is due. I think the NYPD handled this really, really well. I think this was an explosive situation that, you know, could have gone in a very different direction. So, and I think, you know, to his credit, Eric Adams said some pretty intelligent things about, you know, what's really going on here, what the root problems here are. That being said, that statement put out by that agency, I think, you know, really hits home, because they talk about disorderly conduct, and at the end of the day, at least with respect to Cenat, you know, I think that's probably what this is going to end up being, not a criminal conviction, a violation, maybe even a dismissal. I think his behavior was more consistent with disorderly conduct, and there are certain subsections of that violation that may in fact apply here.
How do you think the laws will change moving forward when you have streamers or influencers of this magnitude and following, and how that affects city codes and rules to ask and people to ask? If we get, how does this change stuff? Because this is fairly new, what we're seeing.
You know, I have to tell you, I think that's the headline here, because I think one of the reasons that NYPD charged what they did is because a lot of what they do is, whether he's guilty of it or not, they have to send a message, right? And they have to let people know, going forward, this guy's got 20 million followers. You've got to be more responsible with respect to what you're doing, because there are a lot of people relying on what you have to say and what you're tweeting.
And it was so interesting because you can watch him watching the crowd outside on his feed as it's happening. I mean, it's
exactly. So, you know, to Bianca's point, I think they're going to have to take a hard look at this and see how they can regulate it better. Even if this case doesn't end up going anywhere, I think a message has been sent that this sort of behavior is not acceptable.
Well, we got to send a message to the people. Where can they find you at? Because we're still waiting for you to make an Instagram.
I'm here. I'm in Manhattan. You can, how about this? PeterMFrankel.com.
There we go. Making it easy for us.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.